This happened last month. I was home alone in my small top-floor apartment. I'm used to being alone, it's been peaceful since I moved away from the city. It started as any other rainy evening. I was working on a graphic design project while a storm raged outside. The sound of rain tapping against my window felt cozy at first, but then I heard it. Faint tapping. It was quick and rhythmic. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just branches hitting the glass. Still, it wouldn't stop. My heart raced a little. I tried to focus on my work, but something felt off. The next evening, the storm got worse. The wind howled, and thunder rolled. I decided to play some music to drown out the sounds. But that's when I heard it again, muffled voices. They were low and like a conversation just out of reach. I looked over at the empty unit next door. It had been vacant for weeks. Was that just the wind? I felt a chill run down my spine. The voices faded in and out, but my curiosity dragged me closer to the door. I pushed my ear against it, listening. There was nothing, just silence. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. That night, I crawled into bed, feeling tired, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those voices. Finally, exhaustion took over. I fell asleep but woke up to a strange thudding noise from inside the walls. It was rhythmic and hollow. My stomach dropped. I felt cold, and my pulse quickened. I switched on my lamp, cutting through the darkness. Was it just the old building settling? I lay still, listening. I gathered my courage and got out of bed. I walked down the hallway quietly. The wooden floors creaked beneath my feet. I pressed my ear against the wall, straining to hear over the storm outside. And then it started again, thuds, like something was trying to get my attention. That a knot formed in my stomach. Should I call someone? But who? My friends would think I was crazy. I backed away slowly, feeling a wave of dread wash over me. Then I heard it. A whisper, faint but clear. It came from where the thudding was. My heart raced. I thought I could make out words, but they slipped away when I tried to focus. I nearly screamed, but I covered my mouth. I didn't want whatever was out there to find me. I turned slowly to the window, breath caught in my throat. The storm made everything look chaotic. And then I heard it again, soft scratching at the window. My heart pounded harder in my chest. I took a step back, panic rising in me. Suddenly, I heard a voice say, "Let me in." What was happening? My mind raced. I glanced outside, hoping to see nothing. The storm roared outside, every flash of lightning making me feel more trapped. What was trying to connect with me? The storm seemed to echo my fear. And then nothing. I barely slept that night. Every creak and groan of the old building kept me wide awake, jumping at shadows. Morning finally came, but the storm didn't let up. Instead, it drummed heavily against my window, a constant reminder of the night's whispers. I felt trapped, like I was suffocating in my own home. After a long shower, I tried to focus on my work, but the storm's presence clung to me. I couldn't shake those words, "Let me in." It replayed in my head like a broken record. My hands shook as I tried to sketch, the pencil slipping from my grasp. Finally, I took a break and made myself a cup of tea. I stood in the kitchen, listening to the rain. Maybe I should get some fresh air. I thought about going for a walk. It was just the weather messing with my head, but my thoughts drifted back to the vacant apartment next door. I had never been inside, and curiosity gnawed at me. What if I found something that explained the whispers? Perhaps it was all just my imagination. Swallowing my fear, I decided to check it out. That I walked over to the door that separated my unit from the empty one. It was old and worn, but the handle turned with ease. I pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, echoing down the dark hall. The apartment was dim, almost completely untouched. Dust coated the surfaces, and the air felt stale. That I stepped inside, heart thudding loudly. There were empty rooms, peeling wallpaper, and broken furniture. My gaze swept around, landing on a large window. The rain hit the glass in rhythmic patterns, almost mocking me. Then I spotted a small door at the back of the apartment, half hidden behind a stack of boxes. It looked like a closet, but something about it felt different. I approached, my pulse racing in my ears. As I reached for the handle, a loud bang echoed through the room. Startled, I jerked back and glanced around, expecting to see something move. Nothing. Just the rain pouring outside. I took a breath, forcing myself to focus. I opened the door a crack, and the hinges creaked painfully. Inside, it was dark. I couldn't see much, but a rush of stale air escaped, carrying a strange scent, something damp and musty. I squinted and stepped in further, the floorboards creaking beneath me. A small window faced the back of the building, covered in grime. That's when I saw a small, rusted key hanging from a nail inside the closet. It sat there, forgotten. My heart raced as another shout from outside drew my attention, a desperate, echoing call that sounded like the wind itself was warning me. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the key. Should I take it? It felt like it held some sort of significance, but what if it was tied to whatever was trying to make contact? Just then, the power flickered, plunging the room into darkness. I froze, the shadows closing in around me. Fear gripped me like a vice. Was I alone? Or was something lurking just outside my line of sight? And what was that voice trying to tell me? I needed to get out. The air felt heavier as I stood in that dark closet, the rusted key seeming to glow in the dimness. I wanted to leave. I needed to leave. But my hand had a mind of its own and reached for the key. As my fingers grasped the cold metal, a sudden crash echoed from somewhere beyond the apartment, rattling the walls. My heart raced. I dropped the key, the sound of it clattering to the floor drowned out by my rapid breathing. I took a tentative step back, eyes darting toward the open door. The rain continued its relentless assault outside, but now it felt more like a countdown, urging me to make a choice. Should I stay or flee? Gathering my courage, I edged toward the doorway, glancing back into the closet one last time. The shadows shifted behind me, and the sensation that I was being watched prickled at my neck. Taking a deep breath, I turned and bolted out into the main room. I could barely see, all the windows were barely illuminated by the stormy sky, then I heard it again, the sound of something shifting in the apartment. It came from the corner, where an old armchair sat, draped in a dusty sheet. My instinct screamed at me to get out. I picked up my pace, ready to sprint back to my own unit, just as I reached the threshold, a whisper carried on the wind. Stay. The voice slid through the air, chilling me to the bone. I froze, gripped by an almost magnetic force. The armchair creaked, almost in response, and I caught a faint rustle beneath the sheet. My fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, and I didn't wait to find out what it was. My feet were moving before I even thought about it, darting down the hallway to my apartment. That I slammed the door behind me and locked it. The sound reverberated in my small space, bringing an unwanted sense of security. I pressed my back against the door, breathing heavily. The pounding of my heart filled the silence, and I listened for any signs of movement. Nothing. Still shaken, I grabbed my sketchbook and pencil from the table. I tried to calm myself by focusing on the swirling clouds outside. Instead, my mind reeled, swirling with confusion and dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial, a connection to whatever was haunting my thoughts. That's when I remembered the key. It might be the key to understanding everything. I glanced at the closet door, half expecting it to be ajar, but it remained shut. Now it seemed so uninviting that I fought the urge to return to the vacant apartment, but curiosity clawed at my insides. What was behind that closet door? Who or what might I find? I set my sketchbook aside and paced, feeling trapped within the very walls that had once felt like home. That I looked toward the window, its glass vibrating with the storm's fury. The power flickered again, and I dropped my head, feeling overwhelmed. Then, just as I thought I would lose my mind, something caught my eye, a flash of movement outside the window. Without thinking, I rushed over, peering through the grimy glass. I squinted against the rain. Shadows danced in the gloom outside, shifting, merging, but one shape stood apart. Someone was there. A wave of apprehension swept over me. I took a step back, my heart racing. This was no random passerby. I could feel it. My pulse quickened, and I realized whatever was happening was so much worse than just whispers. Now, I had to know. I stood there, frozen, staring out the window. The silhouette was too vague to identify, yet it felt eerily familiar. My breath quickened, and I instinctively backed away, pressing my back against the wall, wishing it could somehow absorb me. The shadows outside twisted and turned, but I couldn't look away. I needed to gather myself. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past midnight. No wonder I felt so jumpy. But there was something else at play here, something that felt primordial, as if I had tapped into a pulse of dread that ran deep in the earth that I needed answers. I turned back to the window, putting my hands on the cool, damp glass. The rain blurred the world outside, but I caught sight of movement again. The figure shifted slightly, enough for me to catch a glimpse of a pale face turned up toward my window. I gasped and stumbled back, barely catching myself on a chair. My heart hammered, and I felt the sweat gather at my temples that I couldn't just stand there. I had to see if anyone else noticed. Perhaps Mrs. Henderson in 2A was also peering out her window, trying to make sense of the bizarre scene unfolding below. Frantic, I moved toward my door but stopped short. What if it was dangerous? What if there was something out there that I was not ready to confront? Then, the power flickered again, plunging the room into darkness. My heart dropped. My first instinct was to reach for my phone, but before I could, I heard a loud thump followed by a dragging sound from the back of the apartment. My stomach sank. I wasn't alone. I darted to the kitchen, gripping a knife from the drying rack, my fingers trembling. The shadows felt thick, heavy. I strained to listen, holding my breath as the sound came again, a slow, deliberate scrape, as if something or someone was moving through the hall. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shakier than I intended. The only response was the howling wind battering the window. I cursed under my breath, wishing I could take it back. How many horror stories started with a foolish character who called out to the unknown? I crept towards the back of the apartment, gripping the knife tightly. I paused at the darkened hallway, debating whether to turn on the light. But if there was an intruder, I didn't want to give away my position. I had to be cautious. The dragging sound came again, closer now. My heart felt like it might burst from my chest. When I turned the corner, the closet door stood ajar. My stomach turned. The memory of the key flooded back. I had dropped it in the other apartment, but something about it felt significant. Just then, I noticed the sheet from the armchair lying twisted on the floor. Had it fallen? Or had something pulled it down? I took a shaky step closer. As soon as I reached for the sheet, the sound returned, a heavy thud from within the closet that I froze. Then I heard a voice, familiar and distant. "Let me out." It wasn't a whisper. It was a plea. It was my own voice. Suddenly, everything felt like a dark spiral, pulling me in. Something was waiting, lurking just out of sight. I hesitated, tension swelling in my chest. I knew I had to find out what it was, even as fear clawed at my resolve. But the moment I reached for the doorknob, something heavy slammed against it from the other side. I staggered back, heart racing, the knife trembling in my grip. The unyielding thud echoed through the apartment, and for a moment, I was paralyzed by shock. A cold sweat coated my palms as I tried to make sense of it. Was someone or something trapped inside? Or was whatever lay behind that door simply playing with me? "Who's there?" I managed to croak out, surprised by the tremor in my own voice. The sound didn't come again, leaving an oppressive silence that pressed against my ears. I took a small step forward, gathering what little courage remained. I tried the doorknob gently, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like the door was a boundary, separating me from whatever horror waited on the other side. I pressed my ear against the wood, hoping to hear anything that might provide me with a clue. The closet creaked under my weight, and I heard it again, a soft whimper. "Let me out." The sound sent ice through my veins. Was it really me? Was it an echo of my own fears? I felt drawn to it, yet part of me screamed to run. Then, just as I was about to back away, a loud crash cut through the silence. I jumped, and the knife slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the floor. The noise had come from the living room, and my heart fell. Whatever was in the closet could wait. I could either choose to confront it or find out what was lurking in the other room. That I turned quickly, my breathing quickening again. As I neared the living room, I could smell something strange, something akin to burnt wood and smoke. I hesitated at the doorframe, peering through the darkness, where rain continued to hammer against the windows. The faint outline of my furniture looked ominous, elongated by shadows. Then I saw it, an overturned chair and a book lying open on the floor. My heart sank further. I had left it on the coffee table, but now it seemed to tell a story I wasn't ready to face. Was someone here? "Who was there?" I shouted again, voice shaking. I took a step into the room, but before I could get a better look, the living room light burst back to life, and I flinched, momentarily blinded. Once my vision cleared, I scanned the room. Everything was just as I left it, except the chair. It was definitely in a different position, angled toward the window. I approached cautiously, wary of what I might find. That's when I saw it. A message written on the fogged glass of the window. My blood ran cold as I read the words, "She is here." I stumbled back, the sheer absurdity of it gnawing at my mind. Was this a prank? Was I losing my grip on reality? I looked around, searching for any sign of life. Just then, a footstep echoed from behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I spun around, knifeless and vulnerable. Someone was in my apartment. I froze, my mind racing. The footstep had been clear and heavy, but all I could see was shadows and empty space. I strained my ears for another sound, but all I got was the relentless patter of rain outside. "Hello." I managed to call out, my voice barely above a whisper. The air felt thick, charged with a tension that made my skin crawl. I stepped back toward the doorway, trying to find my knife, but my heart sank as I remembered it was still on the floor in the other room. A chill swept through the living room, and I caught a glimpse of movement near the corner by the window. Was it just my imagination? I squinted into the darkness, feeling overwhelmed. Then I heard it again, another footfall, closer this time. My heart hammered in my chest. I had to move, but instinct screamed for me to stay put. I glanced around for something I could use to defend myself. The coffee table loomed in front of me. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy vase that felt like it could do some damage if I needed it to. My grip tightened around the glass as I took a shaky breath, gathering my resolve. "Show yourself," I shouted, surprising myself with the volume. My voice echoed back at me, filling the room with desperation. For a moment, everything went quiet. The storm outside roared, but it felt muffled, almost distant. Then, from the kitchen, I heard a soft crackle, like a match striking against rough paper. Vanilla and smoke filled the air, and I felt a surge of dread wash over me. What was happening? With cautious steps, I made my way toward the source of the noise. Each footfall felt like too much, as if the floorboards themselves were betraying my presence. The kitchen was dimly lit, the flickering light casting long shadows across the walls. When I reached the doorway, I stopped short. The flame of the stove flickered, but it wasn't on. Instead, a strange blue light emanated from the darkened corner, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I saw. A figure loomed by the refrigerator, their features obscured by the shadows. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear. "Who are you?" I managed to croak out, but no answer came. The figure shifted slightly, and the light flickered again, revealing glimpses of what looked like a smooth, featureless mask. Just then, the lights flickered again, making the room plunge into darkness for a heartbeat before the power stabilized. When the light returned, the corner was empty. No one was there. Panic surged within me. Had I imagined it? I couldn't trust my own eyes. But when I glanced back toward the living room, the window caught my attention. The message on the glass appeared to have shifted slightly that I turned to look again and saw, scratched into the fogged surface, a new message: "It's not safe." I could hardly breathe as the reality of my situation sank in. I rushed to the door, adrenaline coursing through me as I grasped the knob. My mind raced with one primal thought: I had to get out. But just as I turned it, the sound of a child's laughter filled the air, echoing around me as if it were all around the apartment. My heart seized, and I stood frozen, trapped between my fear and the growing sense of dread. "Who is there?" I screamed, my voice shaking. The laughter grew louder, and I knew I was far from safe. I felt my heart race as the laughter faded into odd silence, leaving a heavy weight in the air. I glanced at the door, wishing I had the courage to run out right then, but my feet felt glued to the floor, the chill intensified, and I shivered, clenching the vase tightly. I took a cautious step back toward the kitchen, where the blue light had pulsed with an eerie energy. I needed to know what I was dealing with, even if it terrified me. As I peered into the kitchen, the shadows danced across the walls, and the uncertainty clawed at my insides. I scanned for movement, forcing my eyes to focus. Nothing. Just the flickering overhead light and the persistent patter of rain outside that I edged closer to the corner where I had seen that figure. My heart pounded in rhythm with the pulsing light that still glowed ominously in the shadows. It felt like a beacon beckoning me to step forward. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned, hearing the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing echoing from the hallway leading to the bedroom. My stomach twisted. I couldn't stay here. I took a deep breath, clenching the vase even tighter. "Who is there?" I said, trying to sound more assertive than I felt. The only reply was the sound of the storm raging outside. Then, without warning, the lights flickered one last time and died, plunging me into darkness. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. Panic surged through me, and I fought back tears. I was alone. No, not alone. Something was here with me. That I fumbled for the light switch on the wall, but it wouldn't budge. In the darkness, the laughter returned, echoing like a distant memory, chilling me to the bone. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't comply, and then I heard it again, closer now. The unmistakable sound of shuffling footsteps entered the room. I felt my pulse quicken anew. What was coming for me? My throat tightened as I squinted into the blackness, desperately trying to see anything that in that moment, I remembered the message I had seen on the window: "It's not safe." My mind screamed that I shouldn't be there, that every second was ticking away like a countdown. I finally made a choice. I had to leave the kitchen. I turned my back to the pulsing blue light and slipped into the hallway, hoping to find my knife or any means of protection. I could feel the distance from the kitchen stretching, but the footsteps followed as if they were testing the space between us. That I felt around in the dark, heart racing, when my fingers brushed against something cold and solid. It was the table, and on it sat a small flashlight. Relief washed over me, but as I flicked it on, a cold breath swept by me, making the light flicker wildly. The beam illuminated the hallway. That's when I saw it: a figure, standing at the far end, only visible in flashes of light. My breath caught. I knew then it wasn't the child I had imagined. This was something far more sinister. "Get away from me!" I yelled, my voice cracking. But the only answer was the laughter, now mingled with a low, chilling whisper: "Come play." In that instant, I knew that my fight for survival was only just beginning. I bolted down the hallway, the flickering beam of the flashlight wavering in my grasp. I didn't dare look back. I could almost feel the shadow of that figure stretching behind me, crawling closer. My heart raced as I stumbled over the edge of the rug, barely catching myself before I felt that I reached the end of the hallway and flung open the nearest door. My eyes darted around the darkened room, a small bedroom. In the corner, I could make out a nightstand and what looked like a closet. I dashed inside, shutting the door softly behind me, praying it wouldn't creak. The silence swallowed me, but my mind was buzzing with memories of the strange laughter and the sinister whisper. I pressed my ear against the door, desperate to catch any sounds from the hallway. The storm outside raged on, its thunder booming, masking any footsteps. I fought against the anxiety tightening my chest. I had to think. This wasn't my first fear-filled moment. I needed a plan. I turned, scanning the room with the flashlight. Then I spotted a small wooden chair near the nightstand. I dragged it close to the closet door and stood on it, reaching for the top shelf that I managed to pull down an old baseball bat. It wasn't much, but it felt sturdy and provided me some comfort. Clutching it, I steadied my breaths, listening intently. That's when I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet outside the room. This time, it was slow and deliberate, as if the figure was testing my resolve. I couldn't sit still any longer. I glanced around for anything else I could use. A small window loomed at the far end of the room, partially covered by a curtain. Could I escape through there? But the thought of climbing out into the storm sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. With a burst of courage, I crept to the window, peering outside through the drops of rain tracing patterns on the glass. My heart dropped. The ground below was soaked, and the wind whipped through the trees, making shadows dance eerily. I was trapped. The shuffling noise grew louder, now accompanied by the same chilling whisper, "Come play." The sound slithered under my skin, igniting a fight-or-flight response. I couldn't let it win. I needed to confront whatever was outside. With trembling hands, I swung the door open and rushed out, bat raised, ready to face my fear. The dark hallway loomed before me, the only light coming from where the kitchen once glowed ominously. But now, the blue light had dimmed, its energy pooling on the floor like a fading memory, and just as I stepped onto the threshold, I saw movement dart across the kitchen. My heart sank. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, or if it was really there, lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, the laughter rang out from behind me again, ringing clearer than before. I turned just in time to see the figure materializing from the darkness. It was more grotesque than I could have ever imagined. "Let us play," it said, its eyes glinting with something unholy. My grip tightened on the bat as I prepared for what came next. There was no turning back now. I swung the bat, fueled by adrenaline and fear. The figure's head snapped back, its laughter morphing into a shriek that rattled my bones. I didn't have time to think. I lunged toward it, but it moved in a blur, darting past me into the shadows. My heart raced as I spun around, bringing the bat up defensively. The kitchen was dim, barely illuminated by the last flickers of abnormal light. I could feel the air grow thick with dread, thick enough to choke on. "Come on," I whispered to myself, trying to summon any courage I could muster. "You can do this." But the only answer I received was the breathless echo of my own denial. I stepped cautiously, straining to listen for any hint of movement. That whispering voice returned, softer this time, but it filled every corner of my mind. "Why don't you want to play? We could have so much fun." I crept forward, eyes darting from the countertop to the empty space behind the refrigerator where the shadows gathered. Flicking the flashlight, I tried to reduce the darkness that clung so tightly. My hands trembled. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of that figure again, its twisted form barely visible behind the old wooden table. I took a step back, ready to bolt. But the floor creaked beneath me, a loud warning in the silence that chased the figure away again, deeper into the shadows. I hesitated, torn between running and pressing on. My instincts screamed for me to escape, but my curiosity held me still. That's when I heard a loud crash from the living room, as if furniture had toppled. A chill ran through me. I couldn't ignore it. Something had changed. Without thinking, I moved toward the noise, bat held tightly, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. As I entered the living room, I was met with the splintered remains of what once had been a coffee table. Glass shards littered the floor like dangerous confetti. It looked like something had flung it against the wall with brutal force. The room felt colder, as if the very air was thickening, laying down a heavy silence. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice bouncing back to me, sounding more desperate than I intended. I wished for a response, even if it was just the wind howling outside. All I got was that lingering whisper again, wrapping around my ears like a muffling blanket. Then I noticed something on the wall, the outline of a handprint smeared in dark, slick streaks as if someone had clawed their way through the shadows. My stomach rolled. I took a step back and bumped into the doorframe, suddenly aware that I was completely alone in a house that was far from empty. The air shifted, a new sound breaking through from deeper within the house, a sickening thud, then silence. My heart sank. I had to see what was happening. Taking another cautious step, I felt a surge of dread. But if it was a person or something else, I had to know. Gathering every ounce of bravery I had left, I crept further into the dim light of the hall, half expecting to find an empty room waiting for me. As I neared the staircase, I froze. I could see a flickering light coming from the upstairs hallway. Was someone up there? It felt like the final showdown I didn't want to face, but I had no choice now. I gripped the bat so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had to find out what awaited me in the dark. The stairs creaked ominously as I ascended, each step a reminder that I was stepping deeper into an unknown terror. The flickering light of a bulb at the top cast strange shadows along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to dance with malicious intent. I paused, my heart thumping painfully against my ribs. Was I truly ready for whatever lay ahead? As I reached the landing, I hesitated, hearing only the persistent sound of rain battering against the windows. It drummed out a chaotic rhythm, almost urging me forward as if the storm itself longed to swallow me in its fury. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step toward the source of the glow. It emerged from a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar. A sickly yellow light spilled out, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing back, ghostly and foreign. I didn't expect a response, yet every shadow felt alive, each one waiting for the moment I let down my guard. I stepped closer, the bat gripped tight in my hands, the tension in the air wrapping around me, but as I pushed the door open, the faint warmth of the light washed over me, revealing an empty room filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. Dust particles swirled in the air, illuminated by the flickering bulb. Everything felt frozen in time, as if the world outside had forgotten this room existed. I shivered involuntarily. The only other sound was that of the wind buffeting the building around me. I felt an urge to turn and run, and yet the dread of not knowing sat heavy on my chest. I stepped inside further. A deep creaking emanated from the floorboards beneath me. And then, the door slammed shut behind me. The dull thud echoed through the silence like a warning. I jumped, spinning back toward the doorway, only to see it sealed tight, no sign of my escape. Panic surged through my veins. I was trapped. My breath quickened as I heard it again, the low, familiar whisper, "Let me out." I clenched the bat tighter, trying to steady my racing heart. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking. My fear morphed into a wild surge of defiance. "What's happening here?" In response, the lights flickered once more, and I could see the figures of children reflected in the glass of a forgotten mirror. They wavered and danced in the soft glow, their faces twisted in silent laughter. My stomach turned as the realization hit these were the lost souls of the apartment, echoes of their past pursuing me through the storm. "Help us," came a desperate plea from one of the children, his tiny voice breaking through the laughter. It grappled with my heart directly, threatening to pull me into their sorrow. "Let me escape," I yelled, panic mounting as a chill enveloped me. But the laughter only rose, a chaotic, ageless cacophony that seeped into my bones. Suddenly, all shadows in the room began to writhe, stretching toward me as if they were alive that I couldn't remain here. I turned, jamming my shoulder against the door, but then saw something, a flicker of the key's memory, embedded deep inside the ghostly whispers. It urged me to look past fear itself. The key I had dropped, a small unlock to all of this. Taking a deep breath, I swung my bat toward the closet door instead, adrenaline fueling my anger and resolve. With a swift thud, it broke the fragile surface, splintering the wood. As the splinters flew back, a gut-wrenching noise came from within. A howl churning with anger and despair cut through the whispers, as if the room itself was awakening. And then, I saw it, a blinding light pouring from the depths of the closet. Faces of those trapped flared into existence, eyes wide with a mess of emotions. I stumbled back, the light momentarily blinding me. Was this the route to freedom or another trick? Without thinking, I leapt into the light, momentarily embracing its warmth and the quiet gasp of collective souls as they tumbled forward to grasp at the tendrils of freedom, and just like that, I broke through. I found myself standing back in my living room, soaking in the drum of the rain still falling. Outside, everything was normal yet profoundly changed. The shadows felt less clamorous. Outside, the storm finally began to ebb, the winds whispering some sort of closure. I took a moment, eyes wide, breathing deeply, trying to process what had just happened, but even as uncertainty and relief washed over me, I noticed the sheen of a wet handprint on the window. My heart seized again. The whispers no longer called out, but some questions hung in the air, unanswered and lingering. I moved to the window, seeing nothing but the ratty view of the wet street, but I knew, there was still a connection. A piece of darkness remained, waiting for its moment. I moved out to a new city soon after, but the memories remained vivid, bound up in mystery. And sometimes, in the quiet of night, I wonder if I will ever truly escape, or if what I experienced that rainy evening would forever haunt the edges of my reality.